Welcome back in live to another episode of ROC Boys Football. We're continuing with our 2022 NFL Draft Prospect positional rankings, and we're moving on to the defensive tackle position highlighted by the Mountain Man, Jordan Davis. Dill, I'm going to kick it over to you because you've done a lot more film work on this position group than I have. These are your rankings, and you're going to really talk me through it. I've watched maybe a game or two on each of these kids. More on Jordan Davis, Devonte Wyatt, because I just love Georgia football. But let's start with the head man in the class, Jordan Davis. What do you see out of him? Why do you have him up at the number one spot here? It's no brainer.
So I think that he was the only defensive tackle this year who I think at times was truly, truly dominant. I don't think it's a great year, quite frankly, for defensive tackles, maybe like we've seen in the past. But again, of the guys, he's the only one who ever truly dominates. And what you like about him naturally is the size and speed combo. I mean, his ability to like two gap and kind of jump from gap to gap, make tackles in the backfield, I think at that size is very impressive. I think a lot of them are like space eating, maybe make a couple tackles, but Jordan Davis, incredible production out of him. So yeah, I think that's kind of what you like out of what he does. Around 32 tackles on the year. That's a lot for a D tackle. I mean, what kind of worries you naturally is the conditioning. You saw him be very tired at times, especially when teams could move the ball. And he benefited from having a lot of 3 and outs on that defense. And the one time Bam was moving it, you saw him have a lot of snaps where he just didn't have the energy to give much. So,
and you also benefit from a really deep defensive line group. So like when they were able to sub, like there's a lot of incentive to sub because they had just 5 stars coming in, Jalen Carter, Devonte Wyatt, some other kids who are really, really good football players. So it's not like he has to stay on the field like some of the other top prospects.
Yeah. So I'm not as concerned about the conditioning just because the NFL is a slow game. Generally, like that hasn't come the tempo and how college does it. So, and I mean, the big concern still is like pass rushing wasn't nearly as consistent. I think there were too many reps where he didn't use his hands at all. Basically, you just like go chest to chest on a lineman and get locked up a little bit. So I think if he was more consistent using his hands, being a force driving guards and centers back into the pocket a little more consistently, like, because I know he has the ability to do it and you see it enough, but I think you like more consistency out of the pass rush. That's what kind of keeps me from thinking, "Ooh, this guy's a surefire."
Yeah, and that's why I am a little bit lower on him. He's my number one defensive tackle, but like he's not a top 20 guy on my big board. And it's just because the positional value, if you will, of a guy who's pretty much just a run stuffer, but he's more than that. Like very, very quick and obviously very, very big. You mentioned his ability to move vertically.
He's disruptive, like he's more disruptive than the traditional like nose guard run stuffer because he does make plays in the backfield and across the line of scrimmage on like zones and stretches and other places.
The one other D tackle that I can think of who got, I mean, maybe Ndamukong Suh years ago, who was well worth it. I mean, he was just as dominant. Vita Vea, I think, is a lot of people are comping him to him. I think Vita Vea is a better player, a little bit more explosive. But I think Jordan Davis can do a lot. And he's a guy that if you struggle against the run, say the Chargers, who've been pretty cheese against the run all year, you can play cover two deep safeties and put him in the box, and you're going to have a good ability to stop the run a little bit. So he offers that too. So yeah, defensive tackle 1. We'll get into him more as a prospect on our big boards. I don't have him as high just because you just haven't really seen that impact in the passing game. And the problem is if he's not going to play like 50% of the plays, like you just can't really justify taking him with the top 20 pick. Let's move on to Perrion Winfrey, Oklahoma kid, little lighter, 6'4", 292. A guy I really liked. I mean, lit up the stat sheet 2 years ago. Do you have his stats handy from this year? He's a very good pass rusher. He's just
23 tackles, 5.5 sacks. So yeah, that's a fairly productive year. Not a ton of tackles, but
it was more last year. I think he was up around 8.5 to 10 in 2020. He was really good. Yeah. Tell me what you saw in his film.
So I think what you see out of Perrion Winfrey is, I think he's got the potential to be very good.
Yeah.
I think one thing he really does is his hands, when he puts them on guys, it seems to be more of a stunning
Purpose.
punch than some of the other defensive tackles. And
Yeah.
he's obviously not big, so he needs to generate power and be able to shock guards a little more effectively than, say, a Jordan Davis. But I think what you love is just really athletic. I mean, when he can move far better than any of these other defensive tackles, I think.
Yep.
Maybe Haskell Garrett's kind of closer to him, but just I think he has potential to be kind of the guy, be a guy who really does make a lot of plays in the NFL.
So
I mean,
one thing that, not to cut you off, one thing that is the big knock on Perrion Winfrey and his running mate Nick Bonito, who we did not include in our edge rankings yet, not very strong against the run. Tell me what you saw there, and why that might be a problem for this kid.
so I think that frame, naturally, you might struggle a little bit because you need to be very good with how you play with leverage. And yeah, there could be too many times where he was playing a little high, maybe playing almost leading with his head to take on blocks instead of his hands. And at his size, I think you got to be really consistent. And I think what he has is the potential to have, even at the lighter weight, to be violent enough and have the explosiveness to take on bigger guards. But he has to do it more consistently, especially in the run game. I think the pass rush is honestly pretty good for the most part.
Oh, I think that's
shed blocks and get after guys. But
yeah, he's got phenomenal hands from what I've seen as well.
But you're gonna have some natural concerns, like can he be consistent in the run game?
Yep.
And play with good leverage and be able to use that athleticism to go make plays, which I know I do believe he can. So to me, it's I think you have good potential with Perrion Winfrey. So that's why I see him as number 2.
A little bit more projecty than some others. Jordan Davis, you kind of stick in there and just let him be.
Jordan Davis is the one guy I think he's going to be really good probably right away, at least at doing what he does in the run game.
That's the thing, is you're really good at what you do. Are you worth a first round pick? We'll see. Star Lotulelei goes from Utah, I believe, years ago. That was kind of his game, and I would guess if you asked, I think the Panthers took him. Would you do it again? I don't know if they would, because it's just there's limited value in that.
I think he's got better athleticism than that, though. I think what he's some of the comps he gets.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I do think he moves far better than a Lotulelei or
not Vita Vea though. Vita Vea.
Who is the guy? The Danny Shelton. Those guys come to mind. Okay. I think he moves better than that. So I think he's got the potential to be a.
Yeah.
And then just moving on,
Travis Jones.
Kid. This is a tough one because obviously UConn's down by 40 points right away in almost every game. So it's it just you see a lot of inconsistency in terms of it, almost what you think effort and explosion off the ball. So there's some bad, but again, it's when you're playing in UConn games, you're playing in empty stadiums, no chance to win these games. It's hard to say what's nobody's motivated at times, I would think, to play. So,
and you're always getting keyed in on because you're the best player on the field.
Yeah, he was the only guy going to NFL. That's fast.
By a million. He's a guy that's a Senior Bowl guy. He's a Senior Bowl guy. It's
that'll be important for sure.
When you aren't playing in the Big Ten, in the SEC, I don't really want to say, maybe Big 12 you could throw in there. When you're not playing in the Power 5 conferences or maybe some other the bigger non-Power 5s, you need to have a good Senior Bowl to show you that you can do it against NFL talent. He's going to be one of them. He's going to the Senior Bowl. I wanted to make sure. They do a lot of one-on-one stuff. We'll see what he can make happen. What I saw from him is just a extremely powerful dude. I'll echo what you said about inconsistency. I think when you're that big, you're just going to get tired. That's 3 of me's. Not quite 3.
Yeah.
It's a lot of meat. It's just a lot of weight and a lot of muscle to have on your frame. And to get tired, obviously, could be very easy. So makes sense for these guys to maybe show a little inconsistency. Let's move on to Jordan Davis's running mate, a guy that I'm probably gonna push back on you here. You've gotten more film in on Devonte Wyatt than I have. Why is he dropping to number 4 here? What do you not like about him? I guess just say what you like about him and then tell me why he's 4.
In my mind, he's all around a solid prospect, but he doesn't have, in my mind, like a trait that's going to potentially make him a really good NFL player. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, what can you be a depth defensive tackle and provide that sort of role
He
in
can be
the
a
team?
starting
Yeah,
defensive tackle and be solid.
Like, yeah, no, I don't mean only depth, but like I just don't see all Pro Bowl potential out of him. I think he's not a giant. He's not a great athlete. There's like no trait that he wasn't super productive. I think there's like a lot of things that just I don't know what, like for Travis Jones, for example, like you watch some of his games, he's putting guys on skates like consistently. I thought Purdue, so Travis Jones, in my opinion, showed something that could very well be very hard to deal with in the NFL. And I think Devonte Wyatt, like again, in a really good defense, played a fair amount, but not a ton, and just I don't know, not super productive. Didn't notice him that much in those games. And
yeah, I'll give you what I saw in a little bit of an argument. I get your argument of like you didn't see the flashes that JD has, that Perrion Winfrey has, and that Travis Jones has, but he might have put out the most consistent and good tape out of all of them. Was like
that's the like, how do you weigh that? It's like,
yeah, it is. I probably weigh it a little higher because I think I want a guy that's super solid. I don't think you're giving him enough credit with that get off. I think his get off for being 315 is phenomenal. And pretty disruptive.
He's given you good 4 years. Like again, like 39 tackles, 25, 30, and 19 the past 4 years. So he gives you a lot of tackles, not many sacks. Not a ton of TFLs. It doesn't strike me as, and that's just it's hard to justify him being above a Travis Jones, who I think showed the flashes of, especially for a defensive tackle, where it's not hard to be decent. It's hard to be very good.
Yeah, okay.
And if you can be very good, you're a problem. Like Aaron Donald, problem.
And you might say this a little bit for like what we saw with Ajabo and Jackson versus George Karlaftis.
Yeah.
Ajabo, with the bend and the speed he has and the length he has, could very well be better than George Karlaftis when have a better career. But George Karlaftis is his roots. Oh my God, his floor, tongue twister. His floor is pretty high. Like you pretty much know what you're gonna get. You see how powerful that dude is. And he's going to be just a solid football.
I just think like good floor for defensive tackle.
Yeah,
like,
then that's a fair argument.
It's not that hard. It's hard to be like noticed as a bad defensive tackle, because if you can just eat a couple doubles, like
you'll be all right. That's true. And then you want to see if you can get a Vita Vea and Aaron Donald, somebody who
get a guy who can actually really
Fletcher
be disruptive.
So those guys who wreck games from the inside.
Because I'm not even sure Travis Jones is that bad of a floor. Like,
let's move on to Haskell Garrett, the last one. A guy who's I saw in a lot of pre-2021 season boards as like the number 1 defensive tackle in the class. I wasn't impressed with this film. You clearly weren't impressed with this film. What did you see from him this year?
I think in this case, like being 6'2" and 300 pounds, and it's just like he just had a lot of trouble physically being a problem for anybody. I think he's got very good first step quickness. There's times where he like beats guys off the ball with a quick swim or a quick slant one way or the other, and can be disruptive doing that. But the problem is like there were a lot of times where he was like physically getting handled fairly easily. I think like when you watch the Michigan game or Penn State, when he's playing good linemen, it's hard to do what he does well and do it consistently. Like hopefully you can hit a swim on a guy who's lunging on you and is a weaker player, and you can make some tackles. So I didn't see a good. I just would like a concerning level of production against the Michigan or against the Penn State, and
that's what we value.
Yeah.
We value the how are you playing against NFL level talent. Like, yeah, light up the stat sheet when you're playing. Who they play? Tulsa. But like, if you're not playing good football when you're playing the Michigans and you're playing the Wiscos, Penn States, that's what we want to see. We want to see you guys, these prospects playing high level football against the top guys. And Haskell was like just getting bullied pretty much the whole Michigan game, along with that whole defense. And so,
and that's my problem is if guys get their hands on him, he has a lot of trouble with that. He has to win on first step quickness generally, and that's how he has to do it. And I think that's very hard to do it in the interior in the NFL. Like, you need to have the ability to, I think, win other ways than just speed.
Okay.
And
So
I think that's what I'm concerned about.
There's one thing we need to do before we close out this video, and we got to put in DeMarvin Leal. We've been waffling. We've been waffling on this. We've been talking about it. We're not sure if we're going to put him in as an edge, as a defensive tackle. I made a space for him right here at 6 at edge. And that's about where I put him. I mean, I'm not a DeMarvin Leal guy. I think he's a tweener. He's not physical enough.
Not elite quickness
inside. He doesn't have that speed to play on the outside. Doesn't have that bend. I was not impressed with the film I saw from him. In fact, I kind of liked his other kid, Michael Clemens, better. I don't know if I'm just completely missing the boat because like the draft community loves this dude. But like, I'm gonna put him right here. I'm not taking him over Jermaine Johnson. I'll get his measurements.
I can get him.
All right, you get him. Like we'll talk about him for a minute. And
6'4", 291. But
a little bit Boogie Basham-ish with the body. I think Boogie went into the Senior Bowl around 283 or something. So it's just like it's a little bit big to be playing edge.
At the end of the day, the thing that DeMarvin Leal had was excellent production. 58 tackles total, 8.5 sacks. So he did, and I agree. I don't think you saw it consistently. You didn't see consistent disruption. I think some of it like broken plays, and I don't know that I'm a little concerned too about what you're going to get consistently and at which position. Because again, when you don't have one that really makes a ton of sense, I don't think he's Perrion Winfrey physical.
No, and that's what I think people like.
And then not George Karlaftis athletic. So it's like you're sitting right in between. And
I think that's a good landing spot for him, and I think Ajabo might jump him.
I'm kind of like have my troubles too because I don't know what he like consistently did that was.
I think he's carrying his 5-star. I mean, he was like a top 20 recruit, and I think that's just like carrying over. But it's like,
that can happen for sure.
Are we seeing like top 15 prospect on film for this kid? I think he's a late first-round pick because I mean I have Karlaftis in the top 10. I think by my big board. Jermaine Johnson will probably be in the top 20. Top 25. And then DeMarvin Leal probably sitting in that 25 to 35 range. But like, I just maybe I need to watch more film of him. I feel like I've watched like 3-4 games of him. I didn't really see much to get excited about. And so that's where we'll put him for right now. And obviously these things aren't set in stone. But that'll do it for our D tackle ranks. We'll get through some of those Bama D tackles, Mathis, DJ Dale, and then kind of work our way. Next episode will be linebackers. I am so excited. I've watched a lot of linebacker film the last couple of days. We're really going to get into this class. As usual, appreciate you guys rocking with us, and we will be back with more NFL draft content later this week. Talk to you then. Peace.